Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Green Witch Homestead. So today I am going to show you all about comfrey. It's native here in the United States, or at least it used to be. It's a little harder to find. A lot of people know comfrey and will grow it in their garden to use as a base for compost, which it's amazing for. But there's a lot of other uses and benefits for comfrey that I recommend everybody have at least a small patch in their garden. This is my comfrey patch. It's 2 plants right here, and they are new cuttings this year. I have some more in other places, but I moved this batch over to my garden so I can control it and maintain it and use it for medicinal purposes. As you can see, the leaves are kind of fuzzy and nice and thick. You can do maybe 5-6 cuttings off of your comfrey plant and it's just going to keep producing. This will be the last cutting that I do for the year. It may or may not grow more leaves after this point because the temperatures are dropping. I know that there are a lot of places that you can source comfrey leaves from for doing some of these recipes that I'm going to be doing today. However, I do highly recommend getting cuttings or getting seeds or finding someone that has a plant for sale and getting this in your garden, because any type of homestead injury, this is my go-to plant, and some of these remedies require having fresh leaves. So all you do to harvest comfrey is just take a sharp knife or a pair of garden scissors or snippers and cut the leaves off. I usually do them about 1 inch to 2 inches away from the base of the plant. Just cut off as many as you want. You can actually cut the entire plant back in the midsummer. I'm going to leave a few leaves because we are into the colder season, so I don't want to damage the crown of the plant and risk losing it. It's a tangled mess, so it's not easy, but if you start on one plant and just kind of take the leaves from the bottom and then work your way towards the center. Okay, so it's a bit drastic, but you can see I've cut most of the plant back and I've gone ahead and left some of the leaves in the center. This one I cut a little harsher, but you can see it's got a bunch of new growth leaves on it. There's actually quite a few in there, so it should be fine. We still have about another week of nice temperature before it starts getting drastically cold all the time, so that'll give those leaves a couple days to get bigger, and then I'm going to come out here and mulch my garden for the winter. So I'm not worried about them, but like I said, I do recommend leaving a couple leaves this time of year just to make sure that you're not going to kill off your plant. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the benefits that this amazing plant has. The first and most common use of comfrey that any gardener is going to know is using it as a compost. This plant, the comfrey plant, has a taproot that can go anywhere from 10 to 30 feet down into the soil. And its specialty is drawing up all of those minerals and nutrients that are deep down in the earth and bringing it up into the plant. That's why the plant itself is so lush and beautiful and thick in most climates that it grows in. Now, what that means for you as a gardener is all of those trace minerals and nutrients are inside these leaves. So what a lot of gardeners grow comfrey for is strictly a composting feeding plant for the rest of your garden. You've probably seen a lot of different people, YouTubers and gardening shows, talk about Comfrey Tea. And that's basically where you take the leaves and you cut, as you cut them back, just like this pile here, you would take these and you would chop them up or rip them up or basically just tear them, and then you put them into a bucket full of water. Put a lid on it. You definitely want to put a lid on it, and you let it sit for at least 12 days. The longer it sits, the stronger it is. The reason that you want to put a lid on it is because it's going to smell horrendous. It is not a pleasant smell, but all of the nutrients that are going to soak out of these leaves into that water are going to give you some of the best vegetables you've ever grown. Once you have your bucket of Comfrey tea made, then you would just take small amounts of it, dilute it out, and water your garden directly with it. That in and of itself makes this plant a must-have for any vegetable gardener. But it doesn't stop there. As an herbalist, there are so many other factors of this plant that make it a key plant to have in your medicinal garden as well. And the reason is because comfrey has a component in it called allantoin, That compound is responsible for the plant's ability to help soothe skin irritation, help with inflammation, and has even been used to help speed the recovery of broken bones. There's many different ways to access the components in this plant. Most of the things that Comfrey is used for are topical, and I do recommend that you stick to the topical treatments for this plant. You can find information on the internet about historical uses that require eating the plant or ingesting the medicines made from it, but nowadays there's so many new things that are in our soil introduced by us that I don't recommend, and neither do a lot of herbalists recommend the use of Comfrey internally anymore. However, that doesn't affect how it's used topically in the slightest. You can make a tincture out of the plant as well to use as a mouth gargle if you are prone to cold sores or other ulcers in your mouth, and that does work really, really well. You're not running the risk of consuming it because it is a gargle. It's meant to be gargled and spit back out. So you can do that. It's not something that we make here on our homestead because neither myself or Heath are prone to getting cold sores. But if you did want to make the tincture, basically you would take your leaves and you're going to use fresh leaves. So you would take your leaf and you would cut it up into small pieces, rip it, tear it. You don't have to cut it. You can use a knife, you can use scissors. You basically just want to get as much surface area exposed as possible. You would take them and you would take a mason jar or any type of container, pack it as tight as you can with these chopped up leaves, and then you're going to top that container off with clean grain alcohol of at least 80% or higher. You're going to let that sit in a dark location for about a month, shake it every day, and then strain off the liquid from the plant. You can discard the plant directly into your compost pile, and then that liquid, that's going to be your gargle. If you're going to use it on a severe sprain or even a broken bone, you're going to want a fresh leaf. And basically what you would do is you would take 3 or 4 of these leaves, you would kind of mash them together to massacate them just a little bit, and then apply them directly to the wound, kind of as a poultice, and then wrap it up in a cast or a bandage. That would be something that you would put on a broken bone or severe sprain, and it's going to help aid the healing process, especially with the swelling. It's going to keep the pain down, a lot of different things. The other thing that you can do with Comfrey is take these leaves, and this is what I'm going to do with this batch because I don't have any sprains or broken bones right now, so I don't need the fresh leaves. But with this batch, I'm going to take them inside and I'm going to dry these leaves out. We just hang dry them. You don't need to put them in a dehydrator. Just grab a handful of them to get little bundles, about 10 or so leaves, and then just hang them up to dry. This process usually takes about 2 or 3 weeks for them to get nice and dry. You can use a dehydrator, but I don't recommend it because the dehydrators usually apply heat to help dry the plant, and that runs the risk of evaporating off some of the components as well as the water. So I highly recommend for this particular plant that you do it in a hang dry method. The reason that you want to dry these guys, because I'm going to make an emulsification, and that means I'm going to soak them in oil. When you do an emulsification, you want as much water out of the plant as possible, because if there's water or moisture in your oils, it's going to make them go rancid a little bit faster. So you definitely want to work with the dry plant in this regard. Now, for the most common and well-used medicinal purpose for owning Comfrey is the salve. Comfrey Salve is usually very well received and well known and understood by most people who are delving into home remedies. It is super, super easy to make. It's my go-to for any type of farm injuries, cuts, bumps, bruises, sprains. I call it my better than Neosporin. It's great to have. It's long-term storage. You can add different scents to it, and now I do have a longer video that goes into more details on how to make the salves. If you want to check that out, I will link it at the end, as well as put a link down in the description below. But the basics of making a Comfrey salve is, like I had said earlier, we're going to dry the leaves and soak them into oil. And it's the same practice that you would do for making your tincture. You're going to cut the leaves up as small as you can get them and shove them into the jar. You want to stuff as much in there as possible. And then you would fill it with a carrier oil. You can use any type of oil. I use extra virgin olive oil. I put a little bit of vitamin E oil in there, top it off with the oil, give it a good shake, make sure that it's all in there, and top it off again if you need to. This is going to sit out in a sunny location. Tinctures go in the dark, emulsions go in the sun. You want to put this out in a sunny location for at least 3 days. full sun exposure if you can. Outside is the best. If it's too cold or too late in the year, then do it on a window that's south facing and get some nice sun exposure to this. As long as you get those first 3 days in the sun, you're good to go. I like to leave my comfrey in the oil for at least 3 or 4 weeks before I strain it off and move on to the next step. Once you've reached that 3-week mark, you're going to take these jars of oil and you're going to strain out the plant. Again, the plant part gets discarded into your compost or directly into your garden beds if you so choose. And the oil is what you want. That oil is now going to be heavily infused with all of the good stuff that's in these plants. I like to add some colorants to mine and some essential oils for different scent combinations just to make it a little bit more pleasant, because the comfrey doesn't have the best smell in the world. Then all you do is you put your oil into a crock pot, heat it up, add your beeswax, and then you would pour it into your storage containers. I like using these little metal tins because it's a nice surface area, makes it easy to apply. As long as you made sure that your leaves were nice and dry before they went into your oil, this is going to last on the shelf for years. Now, these particular jars were actually made 2 years ago, and as you can see, they still are in perfect condition. And they smell amazing. I use eucalyptus and tea tree oil in the sense of these ones. The amount that you use depends on the area that you're using it on, but you would just take your fingers. This is an unused one, so I'm not actually going to do it, but you would take your finger and you would just get a good little dollop on your finger, and then you would rub it on your hands to warm it up and apply it to the area that's affected. The thing to remember about Comfrey Salve is that comfrey is going to accelerate the healing process, the skin regeneration and the bone regeneration. It's going to accelerate it. That's what it does. So if you have a deep wound, like a deep puncture wound or a deep cut, do not apply this Comfrey Salve to it until the wound is almost completely closed. Unfortunately, what's going to happen if you do, and if there's any type of infection in that wound, it can get trapped inside. So do not use comfrey on deep wounds. But any other type of wounds or bruises, it's good to go. Hands down, if I could only have one plant that I grew in my medicinal garden, this would be it. I'm going to go ahead and link in the descriptions below some places that you can purchase comfrey cuttings from, as well as bundles of the pre-dried leaves if you don't have time or space to grow the plant yourself. I will also link the video on that goes into more detailed instructions on how I make my salves if you want to give that a try. This plant, guys, I swear, is the best thing that could happen to you and your garden, especially if you're a homesteader, and especially, like I said, if you're like me, if you work with rabbits or chickens or animals where you get lots of cuts and scrapes and bruises. This is a lifesaver. Well, the days are getting shorter and the sun is already starting to go down for the day. I'm going to head inside, get these guys bundled up, and start hanging for them to dry and get some dinner started. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Feel free to click the bell to get notifications to stay up to date with all of our things that we're doing here on the homestead. Please subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. It really does help with the numbers. I'm going to try and bump up production on my videos. I usually only post every Sunday, but we're going to try and swing it now where we do Sunday as well as Wednesday. I have a lot more time on my hands, so hopefully that means I'm going to have time to give to you guys. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time. And don't forget, get your hands dirty.